I'm with the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. We will, as I'm told, be starting in 10 minutes. Pardon me, I'm unfit, so the stairs have raised my heart rate. The bathrooms are on my right, your left, should you need to go to the bathroom. And I do suggest that you do go, so that when the MEC and the guest speaker come up, we're all ready to roll. That's the purpose of me being here, that all of us who need to go to the bathroom do so, and that we identify our seats and take our seats. Good evening.
Thank you. We may be seated. No, I think you're fine. You're fine there. Thank you. I think we are all seated. Okay, let's just wait. Thank you. Honorable MEC of Social Development, Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, Ms. Mbali Hlophe, the Vice Chancellor of UNISA, Professor Lenkabula in absentia, Mr. Shonisani Munjetsi, the CEO of SANBI, Gauteng Premier's Expert Advisory Committee on Climate Change, Professor Sibusiso Vilnkomo, Executive Dean of the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs, Ms. Matilda Casella, the Acting HOD, Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, representatives from national, provincial, local government, business community, institutions of higher learning and members of the civil society present here today, members of the diplomatic corps present here this evening, distinguished member of the audience, invited guests, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Good evening. It looks like you're not sure. I just want to take this opportunity to welcome all of you to the 2023 Gauteng Summit, Climate Change Summit, under the theme Towards Decarbonization of the Economy and Climate Resilient Society. Tonight, you are here because we are planning a very imperative discussion on the urgent need for a just transition in Gauteng. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about the just transition and South Africa's, which we know it's obviously South Africa's economic hub. And we also recognize the vulnerabilities of this region, called Gauteng, when it comes to climate impacts and the need to mitigate carbon emissions. And I think all of us, we are aware of that. The Gauteng Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, in partnership with our school, are the host convening this crucial summit. It's important for our school because we have 9 focus areas in this school. And the 9 focus area, one of them is called natural resource management and livelihoods, sustainable livelihoods. So that area of study, it's very, very critical for us as a school, because we cannot have a school of public and international affairs which does not deal with how we manage natural resources and how we sustain livelihoods. And climate is one of those key factors that affect our livelihoods as well as our natural resources. And this is the reason why the school becomes a suitable partner for Gauteng in this endeavor. We're going to be here for 3 days. Tonight is an opening, formal opening in the form of a gala dinner, but the event is 3-day. We are going to have dialogues, participation in dialogues from various stakeholders from diverse sectors, They will include business, they will include labor, women, youth, civil society, and the aim here is to unveil the current administration's vision for climate change response in the Gauteng City Region, and also to foster collaborative commitments to action. So you can see that out of the success of this event, we are able to have more until we are able to see the just transition that we're talking about. So we are here this evening and looking forward to your participation starting from tomorrow. And I think one of the reasons why South Africa also becomes one of these countries, you will realize that in Africa, top three countries with are contributing to climate South Africa is one of them. South Africa, Egypt, and Algeria. These top three. And we are also aware that our government also approved key climate actions, and they also established the Presidential Climate Commissions. And you will remember that during the last UN COP26, about 4 countries, the UK, the US, EU, I don't know why I'm saying countries, because EU obviously is not a country, and Germany, they have committed to this to form partnership with South Africa, and the aim here is to support this just transition away from coal towards charting a pathway for low carbon emission in our country. And obviously, the partnership seeks to achieve those national climate goals that South Africa has, and it is the first of its kind globally, and I think the aim as well is to create a template for other countries to follow. So without wasting any time, I'm going to invite to the podium our Honorable MEC, Ms. Mbeki, to also offer us a few remarks. Thank you.
So I always have to adjust the mic whenever I get on the podium. Good evening, everyone. They look a bit tired. It's been a long day. Have you been stuck in the traffic? Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here today. Program Director, our partners, the TM School, our distinguished guests, the diplomatic corps that is amongst us, our social partners and stakeholders present, not forgetting members of the media. I greet you this evening, and it's an honor to deliver these opening remarks at this Gauteng Climate Change Summit Gala Dinner, which we proudly host together with the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs. Climate change is no longer an abstract concept confined to scientific journals or distant predictions. Climate change is stark and very present in our lived reality, affecting us right here in Gauteng, across every corner of our beautiful land, and indeed reverberating across the interconnected world. The devastating consequences of this crisis are evident daily, threatening our economies, our infrastructure, and the very fabric and well-being of our societies. As emphasized by the Gauteng City Region overarching climate change response strategy and our Action Plan 2020, the signs of climate change are undeniable, and our climate projections forewarn us of a future characterized by a drier climate, soaring temperatures, and a prolonged period of drought. These patterns not only tamper with our agricultural practices, but also amplify the risk of flash floods and erosion, placing immense strain on food security, infrastructure, and our community's livelihood, especially within our urbanized landscape. The challenges before us are daunting, yet they also offer a unique opportunity, an opportunity to redefine our approach, to innovate, and to forge paths towards a resilient and sustainable community. We stand at a point where our actions today will determine the legacy we will leave behind for future generations. Our response, however, must be swift, decisive, and collaborative. It demands a holistic approach, integrating policy, innovation, and community engagement. We must embrace alternative energy, adapt to sustainable urban planning, and invest in green technologies that migrate and adapt to the ever-changing climate. However, we do all this mindful of our unique socio-economic landscape, and we must bring everyone along. Seizing the opportunities, importantly, rather than following in the coattails of the developed nations. As we know that our vulnerable communities are disproportionately affected by climate change, amplifying existing social and economic disparities, and it is our moral imperative to ensure that our actions are inclusive and just, and therefore leave no one behind. Ladies and gentlemen, this next 2 days is going to be very exciting, and we look forward to various debates, engagements, as represented by the plethora of individuals and sectors that you represent. The summit seeks to draw from your various perspectives, from labor, business, academia, students, our innovators, and indeed the ordinary alike. We seek to heighten this global discussion, and as we like to say, to not only be tilted towards what the Western perspectives are indicating, but to rather give it an African and indeed a South African voice. I'm exceptionally proud of the partnership we have with the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs, under the stewardship of Prof. Vin Gomo, the Executive Dean. Prof, your participation and partnership with us as a department is something we don't take lightly. We draw great inspiration from the critical learnings and the positioning of your entity, but importantly, as we embark on the vast mandate of our department, we do so in partnership with you, knowing that this journey we walk with you and with a team of capable, passionate, and certainly visionary academics who will, amongst other things, propel us to remember and be mindful of not just our socio-economic standing, but to ensure that as we embark on this development, it's a development characterized not just for the present, but the future of the generations to come. With those few words, thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable MEC, Ms. Mbali Tlhophe, for that address. And I think you have underscored the fact that this is important for sustainable urban planning, and also we need to embrace alternative energies. And I think this is very, very key in this juncture. And I think I also like the fact that you are also cautioning us to be contextual and inclusive, and also be able to look at our own African perspectives in dealing with the issues around climate change and not just draw from foreign models. And I think that is very, very key in the discussion. Perhaps it will come out of the keynote as well, and it will come out throughout, so that we look at our context, particularly our socio-economic conditions here in Gauteng and the rest of South Africa, and be able to come with responses that will ensure that we cater for all. And I think that is very key. Another warm round of applause for our MEC, please. Right, I'm going now to request that Mr. Shonisani Munjezi, the CEO of SANBI, Gauteng Premier's Expert Advisory Committee on Climate Change, come forward to give us a message of support. And I think SANBI is very, very important in this discussion. And thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to have been invited to come and share some few thoughts here. MEC, and also the members and the representatives and the leadership from the TM school. We're sitting with Prof there. Even if it was some few minutes, it was like a long time. You know, it's like we knew each other for a very long time. He made it very much welcoming. Just want to also appreciate the members of the diplomatic corps, as the MEC had indicated, and all the dignitaries that are represented here, not forgetting my, I call her my colleague, the HOD. We work together in different fora. And everyone else that is represented here. I really want to appreciate the opportunity. I think when the program director indicated a component that you have here of the School of, did you say Natural Sciences and Livelihoods, along those lines, I felt more comfortable that I'm in the right space. Of course, I'm coming in here also representing those that are in the Premier's Expert Advisory Committee on Climate Change. There are members that are responsible for the area focusing on mitigation. I'm more into the space that deals with adaptation. I was lucky enough to represent the country for a number of years pre-Paris, before the Paris Agreement, in preparation for that, specifically on matters of adaptation. At that time, of course, the focus was on mitigation, the 1.5 degrees, and many other things that were being said at the time. And we worked very hard, being led by the diplomatic teams in different areas to advance the cause of adaptation. So if you find me a little bit leaning towards adaptation more than anything else, it's just because that's one area that I find more closer to dealing with socio-economic issues. Of course, at the end of the day, we have to adapt. The efforts that are put in place to deal with decarbonization, of course, they would not take away the fact that we need to put a lot of resources on adaptation, because there are certain things in the legacy of the trajectory that we've been following as countries of the world to come to this point where we need to invest and adapt. The other point that I want to raise is that as part of our work at the time, we hinted on an issue that was not matured at the time. It was the issue of loss and damage. We raised the point that as much as you can mitigate, as much as you can adapt, there will still be losses and damages that are inevitable. I think a classical example is when you look at island states. There are some islands that are lost completely and they will not come back. Also, even here in Gauteng, could be different areas or any other province here in South Africa, that the damage that will be caused with all the experiences that the MEC spoke about earlier. She spoke about extreme events. Some of them will come through heavy rains, floods, hailstorms, heat waves. In some cases, we'll come to a point where certain losses would require us to think beyond mitigation and adaptation and invest a lot in dealing with those aspects that are categorized within the space of loss and damage. It brings into question or into the fold matters of insurances. That's the risk associated with that would be that the premiums would be much more higher, and a lot more would also have to be put in place to, in some cases, not to recover, but to redo and do better in future as we move along. And I want to express our support to the initiative in Gauteng and the initiative and the partnership that as the MEC indicated with the TM school in confronting this matter. I come from Sanbi. We work on what we call evidence-based decision-making. Our role is to provide the science that's needed for decision-making. We do a lot of models, we do a lot of analysis, trends analysis, of course. We work in the space of planning, but everything that we put forth should be supported by credible science. And I think the university, and in particular the TM school, in that regard will be able to support appropriately. I also work very closely with other science institutes and organizations in South Africa. And in that regard, I think the partnership also extends to those that will be able to support appropriately for proper decisions to be taken. The MEC referred to some of the legislative and policy responses that are there already. When I was talking to colleagues in the department, they indicated that the climate change bill, of course, I think it was widely publicized that has been out for public participation, and now it's with the National Council of Provinces. In that regard, we are closer to be one of the few countries, I think, I don't know, in the region, there are many that have gone as far as even coming in to have a legislation that specifically deals with responses to climate change in the manner that South Africa is doing. And that bill will enable us to address the impacts of climate change in South Africa and deal with how best we contribute to just transition, as it was indicated earlier on, and also how we deal with emissions, especially greenhouse gas and reduction thereof. It also provides a space for all stakeholders to work together. Of course, the point that was raised that it's all hands on deck and different sectors also working together. There's one or two things that I also want to highlight here as part of our support, is that climate change compromises the attainment of sustainable development goals. You can pick up 6 or 7 of those 17 or even more, whether we're talking about issues dealing with water security, food security, matters of dealing with poverty. Climate change compromises that. The issue of inequality, which is one of the key things that our country responds and has highlighted as key priorities, climate change also compromises that. One would not forget the issue of health in that regard. I grew up in Limpopo. The malaria belt was a little bit 70 kilometers from where I grew up in Toendo, and studies are showing that it's going south and south, and certain areas that were not exposed as they were before are also confronted with that. So we can say for any other area, and Gauteng also challenged in a particular manner. So we need to take action in that regard, and therefore our role, even in the advisory committee, is to provide that support that is required, the evidence that is required, and inputs that will assist in policy responses, but also more than anything else, in providing actions that will change the situation. My last part, I would want to indicate that, as the MEC indicated, we need to deal with this issue of spatial and integrated planning in a different way than we used to do before, and make sure that we adapt urban areas to this gauge and invest more into that space. And that is an investment with high return as we go along. And there's support all over, from a policy, from science, from business, and others that are raising their hands to say, we are in this together. All hands on deck, and no one should be left behind. We express our support as SANBI. We stand in here as an accredited entity of the Green Climate Fund and also for the Adaptation Fund. In that regard, it also brings with it some advantages in that partnership. And we again say we pledge our support and appreciation to the Gauteng province for this initiative and the TM school in this partnership. And the journey ahead is going to be much more better as we work together. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Munjezi, the CEO of SANBI, for your kind words as well, of message of support as well. And I was listening very closely as you were talking about evidence-based decision making and models analysis that you are doing. And I'm sure you will open your doors for our students in the future, because it looks like you have data as well there that they can use in their studies as well. I think that is a very, very appreciated. This collaborative project or initiative will yield some good results for the school as well. Thank you so much. We really appreciate. A warm round of applause for the MEC. I know that we started late, but we will finish on time. That's good. We will be within the time that we are supposed to be in, because our program is really short. At this point in time, I'm going to quickly just introduce the keynote address under the title, African Perspective on Climate Change. And our keynote speaker this evening needs no introduction, actually. He's our Executive Dean, Professor Sibusiso Vilunkomo, a native of Gauteng. And Prof. Vilunkomo did his primary education, secondary, and high school here in South Africa. You see him standing is because he doesn't want me to read the bio. He doesn't want me to go there to the bio. So he studied at Lincoln University, doing his master's in the US, and also did his MA, or his bachelor at Lincoln, and then his MA and PhD at University of Delaware in the United States. And I think I'm just going to say 1, 2, 3 important things. Professor Vilunkomo is the first public service commissioner who was appointed by President Nelson Mandela during the first democratic election. And I think many of us know Professor Nkomo also from University of Pretoria, where he was the Dean of Economic and Management Sciences. So that's why I'm saying Prof. Vilunkomo is our own Dean and our own native of South Africa here, and he's going to deliver the speech. Prof, over to you. Hands for Prof.
MEC, thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to work with the province and work with your department. You carry very important portfolios, highly respected portfolios that have to do with our survival, agriculture, rural development, social development. These are very important portfolios. When you approached us, we all said this is an opportunity which we should not abuse, but an opportunity we should use for the best. And I thank you again for putting together a team which worked with my team, or our team, at the Thabo Mbeki African School for Public and International Affairs. These teams have worked very well together. I looked at the title, African Perspective on Climate Change. The title, African Perspective on Climate Change, is interesting and important. But I then decided to play around with it and ended up with a title, Climate Change in a Dual Political Economy, or Political Economies in our continent, building in the notion of African perspectives on climate change. I put a column towards a just transition, because if we do not accept the notion of a just transition, we will be doing an injustice to those who cannot help themselves. So a just transition is very important, or just transitions are very important. I was also tempted to pursue this 21st century topic by raising the question as to whether is Africa rising, or is it still trapped in the dependency, understanding of knowledge generation, coming up as a continent of leaders in inventions, because once you start talking about climate change, you've got to also be concerned about inventions. Because technology is part of what can be used to solve the problems of climate change. I also was influenced to say, are we going to participate in the fourth industrial revolution? Because the suggestions of how we should deal with climate change are very much embedded in the notion of the fourth industrial revolution. And if we miss that boat of being part of the fourth industrial revolution, I think this continent will have lost an opportunity. Let me remind you about the third industrial revolution. In this continent of ours, this beautiful continent of ours, only one country was able to enter the third industrial revolution, and that was South Africa. Let me go back and say, with the case of South Africa, even though there are varying views, Dr. Ngobi Leqaba and Dr. Salim Fakir have concluded that climate change, I quote them, climate change is the defining challenge of the 21st century and the greatest current threat to humanity. This is especially significant in the context of South Africa, where fossil fuels are significant contributors to economic growth. Such observations raise questions as to how South Africa and the rest of the continent will pursue their development agendas, particularly in a globalized and competitive world political economic order. Before I go even further, I want to just say a couple of things about our school, because I think it's important that you get a sense of this school, why this school was created. I want to zero into the crisis of the climate change. One of my colleagues whispered in my ear that we must articulate certain things when we have this dinner tonight. The crisis of climate change challenges all of us, especially as intellectuals, institutions, and the government, because ultimately it speaks to issues of leadership, governance, and policy analysis and implementation. It provokes intellectual establishments like the TM School particularly as a critical role player in the public sector education, specifically in the area of public and international affairs. I am therefore elated that the Thabo Mbeki African School of Public and International Affairs, abbreviated TM School, and the Gauteng Department of Agriculture, Rural Development, Social Development, have already put into action the plan to establish serious formal collaborative relationships between our two organizations, MEC. We've got to nourish this relationship because the topic of climate change does not end today. It's going to continue into the foreseeable future. I'm excited about this partnership because it fully aligns and resonates with what the TM School is about. The school was established as a magnet of academic excellence of the University of Pretoria, and not University of Pretoria, University of South Africa, mandated to offer education that would bring meaningful change to society, especially African continent, on matters of leadership, governance, and development. This entails producing graduates who are able to respond to the ever-evolving challenges the modern world in the 21st century is looking for. And climate change is one of the issues the modern world is looking for. We must balance theory and practice. Academic institutions which do not balance theory and practice have become irrelevant. Theory is good, but the world is also very practical. Underline balancing theory and practice, because talk without action amounts to sheer noise. Or it's like an unguided missile. Furthermore, the school is driven by the aspiration to develop and educate leaders that solve complex problems in our continent and in the world. And if we are unable to resolve or solve or deal with these problems, it means the school has not offered much to society. It is a school which is just there to produce the army of the unemployed. I was going to use an example of bees as a case study, but I think I should do it. I was going to skip it. We have figured out that such problems which are complex are insurmountable, provided there is a leadership that is alive to the age-old wisdom easily observable in nature, which is displayed by teamwork, ecosystem, symbiosis, and so forth. Mother Nature seems to demonstrate this wisdom in thousands of ways. For present purposes, let me underscore only one lesson from bees, just from bees. The leadership displayed by bees emphasizes commitment, discipline, sustainable plan for the future, and very important teamwork. The analogy of bees constitutes the foundation or the essence of our logic of partnerships on MOUs with the MEC and your departments. So the bees, who are all bees, work towards the same objective and goal. This summit is very important, MEC. I'm addressing you in particular because you are a very important partner in this initiative. I want to go back to the analysis I started off dealing with on if we want to rise and become relevant in this field or this area of concern, climate change, we must have an agenda for Africa, and that agenda must be global, must be comparative, and must also be grounded in understanding what Africa is about and what Africa wants to achieve. I want to use economics because economics is a fundamental in also understanding climate change. I want to contextualize it, as I said earlier on, in the dual economic analysis framework. The study of South Africa helps to generalize the challenges faced by this continent that is endowed with human and mineral resources, and yet our economic systems are not showing the kinds of results which this continent deserves. I want to take you back to a journey we walked after President Mbeki took over from President Mandela. That was 10 years later after our independence. 10 years into our democracy represented political success, economic stability, integrating South Africa into the African continent and the world. South Africa's economy over this period had shown a roughly 2% growth after this nation's economic growth had been stagnant for many years. There is no doubt that South Africans at that time deserved to celebrate the democratization process and to remain positive about the future. It, however, stands to reason that the major challenge which confronts this country today is the economy and the socio-economic problems which are a direct result of the well-known economics of poverty and discrimination. It is for this reason that President Thabo Mbeki has highlighted the critical problem of the existence of dual economies in South Africa. To better understand the kind of economy South Africa must construct, we quote the definition of it as succinctly developed by the Department of Trade and Industry. The Department of Trade and Industry in 2014 said our country requires an economy that can meet the needs of all our economic citizens, our people and their enterprises, in a sustainable manner. This will only be possible if our economy builds on the full potential of all persons and communities across the length and breadth of this country. Government's objective is to achieve this vision of an adaptive economy characterized by growth, employment, and equity, and this was in 2014. We remain challenged to reach that objective. And in nowadays, we're now confronted with the challenge to deal with issues of the climate, how the climate is changing, and how we can save lives, and how we can create a future for the next generation. Regardless of what Africa's economic woes are, and who is to blame for the climate change deterioration, we cannot remain complicit in this destruction. We've got to take a lead, in other words. And I think the previous speaker spoke, the MEC, you spoke about our role to play a critical role. And the representative from Sanbi, you also spoke eloquently on this matter. This continent must embrace the technical approach of development that places an emphasis on low carbonization or decarbonization, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, acknowledging that coal and gas are the major culprits, and we've got to find solutions, and science allows us to do it. Placing an emphasis on renewable energy sources, industrialization that is based on clean energy sources, reducing household urbanization that negatively contributes to climate change, deal with agriculture and rural development that continues to produce undesirable gases that affect our environment. These are some of the ideas of transitioning away from the current situations we find ourselves in. At least in South Africa, according to GALA and Fakir, our South Africa's Integrated Resource Plan underscores the following, I quote, "The timing of the transitions to a low-carbon economy must be in a manner that is socially just and sensitive to the potential impacts on jobs and local economies. It is in this context that engagements at global forums such as the G20 refer to energy transitions and not energy transition, energy transitions. What does that imply? It implies that this part of the world must have its own ideas as to how we can actually transition from coal, from other forms of energy that are pollutants. We must have our own ideas. We cannot just rely on ideas which come from the West. South Africa's approach to this critical transition is in line with what the world is concerned about. The country is consistent with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, the Paris Agreement, the UN Environmental Programme. Whilst we do underscore the significance of transdisciplinarity in the TM school, we also acknowledge the challenges of industrialization and economic growth and development. Studies demonstrate that South Africa, confronted with major challenges in industrialization and economic growth and industrialization. Professor Ha Yun Chen has concluded, he's from SOAS, University of London. He says the following: once upon a time, South Africa was literally the most industrialized nation outside the core capitalist world. In 1961, per capita manufacturing value added of South Africa was $138, which was 61% that of Japan. and 15% that of the United States. It was 6.3 times that of Korea and Taiwan, and 2.8 times that of Brazil. So we've got to rebuild the industrial sector of South Africa and not rely on pollutants. He also says, in the post-apartheid period, it has experienced, that is South Africa, has experienced a massive premature deindustrialization from around 22 to 24% throughout the 1960s, 70s, and the 1980s. Manufacturing share in GDP declined steeply in the post-apartheid period and fell to 12%. In the final analysis, or before I go to the final analysis, I'm particularly interested in deindustrialization because I have a very clear memory of how the northeast corridor of the United States got deindustrialized. And when it got deindustrialized, it has never been able to come back. That was the corridor of the East Coast. Now, I am particularly concerned about the deindustrialization of South Africa because it's the whole country. It's not a corridor. It's the whole country. It's an engine which is supposed to drive industrialization not only in South Africa, but also in Southern Africa and the continent. So I challenge students of economics, students of climate change, and students who want to know more about how to protect our environment, to focus on the notion of deindustrialization and industrialization based on clean energy if you want to make a contribution. In the final analysis, deindustrialization is a serious threat on the economy, well-being of society, and is an incubator for the army of the unemployed. If you produce graduates, when I talk about the army of the unemployed, if you produce graduates and they end up roaming the streets, unemployed, because your industrial sector is not growing, you have actually created a very serious weapon to bring down that country. It's a very serious weapon. So I recommend highly that we should pay attention to these matters and we should work with the MEC to make sure that we create a situation where advantages are created for our graduates to be part and parcel of this journey. Solutions. South Africa and the continent must have or promote urgent scholarship on climate change. They must do that. It's quite urgent. They must focus on deindustrialization is a requirement for any nation that wants to be, or industrialization, not deindustrialization, industrialization is a prerequisite for success. We must speed up policy development and strategies to industrialize using renewable energy sources. We are challenged to establish and support competitive and leading institutions in this subject. It cannot only be the TM school. Other universities must have an interest in this subject, whether they be in South Africa, in the continent, and must also collaborate with other institutions in other parts of the world. We do collaborate with other institutions in this continent and the world. We must accept that the study of climate change is transdisciplinary. You cannot just approach it from one perspective. It's multidimensional, it's economic, it's urban, it's scientific, it's global, it's international relations. It is everything. It's transdisciplinary. We must encourage the support of important think tanks because they also must play a very critical role in advising even universities as to how to think about issues of this kind. That's the reason why I cited a lot Dr. Thabo. She is associated with a think tank known as the Mapungubwe Institute for Strategic Reflection, and they are a leading think tank in this subject. We must also encourage citizens to read and learn more about the subject so that they can become part of the solution. We shouldn't leave our citizens behind. Previously, when industrialization was taking place in South Africa, citizens were left behind. They didn't even know what was the impact of coal on their lives, their health. They didn't even know what caused emphysema, what caused tuberculosis. They were not given that information. So it's very critical, it's important and urgent that we educate the citizens of South Africa and the continent to learn more about the subject of climate change. The last point I want to leave you with, the concept of a just transformation was actually not coined by universities or by think tanks. It was coined by a labor union or labor unions because they were concerned that if you transition from coal to something else, what is going to happen to the jobs of individuals? And I'm happy that the world has actually embraced the concept. With these few words, I'd like to thank you very much again, and I hope I've stimulated your thoughts, and I'm looking forward to the conference taking place or the summit taking place. And this should not be a once-off MEC. This is not a once-off. We are now in partnership and we're going to sign an MOU. Thank you very much. Enjoy your dinner.
Thank you. Ezandleni. Thank you very much, Prof. And I think the economist in you was very evident on the podium here. Climate change as a threat to humanity, I think that is very, very key. A threat to humanity, and in contexts like ours where fossil fuels contributes to economic growth, we are sitting with a conundrum in terms of making decisions as well. I think, and this is very, very important, and also the role of public sector education in contributing to solutions, schools such as ours and many others, and also the need to balance theory and practice was highlighted as well. And I like the fact that you also came up with solutions, indicating that collaboration is key, and also that the issue of climate change cannot be studied by a scientist only, but it's a very transdisciplinary. And I think I would add multidisciplinary and as well as interdisciplinary. So I think you need a whole multi-pronged approach towards it, and the role of think tanks as well as citizen education becomes a very, very important issue, because even if the government can respond at the level where they sit at national, provincial, or local, if the citizens are not aware of what they should be doing, we will still find ourselves locked in these problems. And I think most of the time when we speak of climate change, I also get worried because I see that when I go to Soweto, I see that people have gone back to buying coals because of electricity. In the winter, people are back now and buying coal to heat their houses because electricity is sporadic. So I think these are very important conversations, and I think we will hear from many of the discussions that we will have tomorrow here at the summit. And this brings us to the end of our gala dinner introductions, and also we will call upon Ms. Matilda Gasela, who's the acting HOD, Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, to come and give us a vote of thanks this evening. Over to you, Ms. Matilda.
Molweni. Good evening. Program Director, Professor Edith Paswana, MEC for Social Development, Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, Ms. Mbali Hlope, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee for Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, Me Refilwe Kekana, Professor Vilnkomo, Executive Dean of the Thabo Mbeki School, Mr. Shonisani Munzedi, CEO of Sanbi, distinguished members of the Russian Embassy, Chief Director Ngomane, senior members of the TM School, ladies and gentlemen. I want to start by thanking the MEC Mbali Hlope, for the vision that you had in asking us to arrange this summit, but not to arrange it on our own. We could have, as the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment, decided to do this on our own. But because of your vision, because of the big picture that you have, you directed us to come and have engagements and a partnership with the TM School. So we want to say thank you very much for that. But I think we would also like to thank you for reminding us this evening that our actions today are what will determine the future, and that what we do today requires swift action. Thank you very much, MEC. A big round of applause to MEC. We would like to thank Ntate Mubedzi from the CEO of Sanbi, our partner as the Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and Environment. He did indicate that on several occasions we've partnered in a number of things, and I think importantly, MEC, they have given us 100 interns who were also dealing in issues of climate change. So they are a very important partner. I think importantly, you also reminded us this evening that we require everybody's participation, because indeed climate change is reality. You reminded that climate change requires all hands on decks, and thank you very much for that. A round of applause for him as well. I think one of the scariest things, I must not forget this, is the fact that he reminded us, and this is the truth, that as a result of climate change, we see islands disappearing. When you said that, MEC, I was reminded of Mirafo, that today we have seen houses actually being swallowed, going underground as a result of climate change. So climate change, once more, is reality, and it requires all of us to be cognizant and do what we are meant to do as human beings. Prof Vilnkomo, thank you so much. MEC and I came to yourself on, this is probably about 2-3 weeks ago, and MEC knocked on your door and said, Prof, we've come to ask for a partnership. You were very embracing. You saw way beyond ourselves. We want to say thank you very much. If it was not for the fact that you opened your arms for us, we would not be here tonight. So thank you very much for your visionary leadership, but also for guiding the team that arranged this summit. Thank you very much. You reminded us this evening, and I think the program director indicated that you were saying all citizens, we must ensure that all citizens read and learn about climate change, because they not learning can prove to be disastrous. You also reminded us of the importance of the 4th industrial revolution, and that the solutions for climate change are embedded in technology. You reminded us that we cannot be complicit, and this is all of us, in dealing with issues of climate change. So we would like to say once more, thank you very much. Siyabulela, Prof. Thank you very much. Very good. There is a team of colleagues who worked tirelessly. I'm sure there were moments when they could not even sleep as a result of really trying to get this summit to be what we see tonight, and I'm sure what we will be seeing for the next 2 days. And Kabui Kokobeto, with humbleness, I'd like to ask that team to please stand up so that they are properly acknowledged. And I'm talking about the team both from the TM school and from agriculture. If you can please stand up so that you get acknowledged. I don't want to call you by name. They are sitting on the table next to Ngomane. Thank you very much. On behalf of Prof. Vilnkomo and Membali Shope, we would like to say thank you, thank you, thank you. And I'm sure they will still acknowledge you in their own way. We want to say thank you, and thank you to each and every one of you here tonight. You chose to be with us. You sacrificed your families. You sacrificed other things you probably would have enjoyed more, but you decided to be here with us tonight. So we want to say, Siyabulela kakhulu, thank you, and thank you. A round of applause to all of you. Wasn't the program director stunning? Hasn't she been wonderful? Hasn't she been wonderful, colleagues? I'm sure we can do better than that. Thank you very much to Professor Paswana for the sterling work that you've done tonight. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I think we are on time. Like I said, it's 1955. The formal proceedings were meant to end 2015, so we did well. And this is not the end of everything. This is the end of formal proceedings. Stay there, relax. There's food on my right side. There's music, food for the soul on my left. So this evening is going to be an evening of networking and knowing each other, and then let's drive safe back home. But for now, please let's not leave the food, wasteful expenditure. I was in China 2 weeks ago as a member of the Central Committee of China or a member of government. You cannot eat anywhere, whether it's in the restaurant or at a function, and leave food in your plate. You have to finish what you are given, or you take it home as the member of the CPC. So, and I thought, wow, the way we leave food everywhere, please let's not leave the food. Let's enjoy the evening. And I want to thank this opportunity to thank my sister who has been doing wonderful work interpreting. I unfortunately did not get the name. We just met here on stage, but I think I have a moment to sit down and relax. She didn't, so she's extraordinary. She did the best, outstanding work. Thank you so much. Can the musician come so that the nice music can play while people are dishing? I don't know how the dishing is going to happen, but I think this table, according to protocol, will be the first table to grab something to eat, and then I think they will direct us going forward. Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Okay,